Hello and welcome to Rando Tech Info. So today is my 3-month review of the OnePlus 7T. I bought this phone a little over 3 months ago, right when it came out. I've been using it as my daily phone ever since. I haven't put my SIM card anywhere else. This has been my phone. Now, we're going to do this review a little different than some other reviews that you've seen from other people or even from me today. I am going to go ahead and give letter grades for all the different areas of the phone, like the battery and the camera and all that. However, I'm going to take those grades and I'm going to compare them to the reviews of this phone when it came out 3 months ago. I did a review roundup of this phone when it first came out, and I gave the phone based on what everybody was saying about the phone at the time, places like Android Authority, The Verge, other YouTubers, and I compiled everything that they said about the phone and I gave it letter grades back at that time. I'm going to grade the phone today and see if they got it right. I want to see if the reviewers, after using the phone for just a few days or a few hours, nailed the review as compared to somebody who's actually been using the phone every day for 3 months. This isn't in any way trying to be disparaging or negative or say anything bad about those other reviewers. They're asked to review phones very quickly, very often, and they don't have a lot of time to spend with the device. So it's not a way to try to criticize them or anybody else. I just want to see if you can really get an accurate idea of how good a device is after using it for just a few days as opposed to a few months. So let's go ahead and get started. 3 months ago, back when this phone came out, people really seemed to like the design and form factor. They liked the screen, they liked how big it was, how bright it was, the fact that it was flat, had a small notch, had good speakers, no headphone jack or IP rating, so not quite perfect. But most people really seem to like it, and specifically on OnePlus phones, something that a lot of people really like is this volume rocker over here on the side that lets you switch the phone to vibrate, full volume, or silent just with a flip of a switch. That's kind of a thing that Apple does on its phones. You can turn the volume on or off on the ringer without having to get into the phone. You can do the same thing on OnePlus devices. So overall, people were really happy with the design, as I'm really happy with the design. So they gave it a B+, and I'm giving it a B+. Next, I want to talk about performance. Performance on this phone is amazing. This thing is a beast. It packs the 855 plus overclock Snapdragon processor in it. As of right now, that is the best processor you can get in an Android device. That's about to change in a couple weeks when the Galaxy S20 comes out. But as of right now, this thing is still the king. It is one of the fastest phones out there. That, along with its 90 Hz screen and its 8 gigs of RAM, makes this phone feel super smooth and super fast all the time. I game with this phone a lot. I consume a lot of video with this phone. I don't know that it has ever dropped a frame, ever, at least that I've noticed when using it. So definitely a beast. Everybody loved that when the phone first came out. It was very well received. Everybody talked about how smooth and fast it was. Everybody was blown away by the high refresh rate. So back then I said that critics had gave this phone an A for its grade on performance, and I am also 3 months later going to agree and say this phone gets an A for its performance. Fantastic performing device. So the camera on this phone is very, very good. When it first came out, people said it was very good. Not great. They said it wasn't quite up there with the Apples and the Pixels of the world, but that it was good enough and that it did the job. And then as people seemed to start using it longer, as slightly longer reviews came out, a week, 2 weeks later, people seemed to be a little bit more harsh on this camera, saying that it was just okay or that it was decent. They weren't quite as favorable about it. In my time using it, I have to say I really like it. I don't actually think it's the weakest part of this phone. I know a lot of people will say that OnePlus phones, they're great with everything except the camera. I don't know if the camera is great, but it's very good. I have grandkids, I have kids, I need a good camera, and this fits the bill. I'm very, very rarely disappointed with a picture or a movie that this thing takes. So I've really been impressed with the versatility of this thing's camera. I think it's definitely its strongest suit is just the different kinds of pictures it can take. You can see what a regular shot looks like, the wide angle, and then the close-up shot. And I did that with a couple of different things here, so you can kind of check it out. The macro mode is also super cool. I don't use it a ton, but when I have used it, I've been really impressed with the results of it. The selfie camera on this phone is pretty good. the front-facing camera. As you can see, here's a regular shot, and then I took a shot in portrait mode. And once again, it does the trick. The portrait mode does a nice job with the bokeh effect. My face looks clean. There is a beauty mode on this phone. Clearly, it's not on right now, but it is there if you want it. Video is also really versatile. You see, you can take video using all three of the focal length camera lenses, the regular, the wide, and the zoomed. And just by pressing the button, you can bounce back between them. Stabilization on this phone is really good. As you can see, it takes a nice stable video when you're walking around. I was not trying to walk around particularly carefully here, and you can see just how smooth the video is. You can only take stable video on this thing with the regular focal lens, with the standard lens. You can't do it with wide angle or zoom, so you lose a little versatility there, but I think most of the time you probably use stabilization with the primary lens anyway. And then finally, I want to talk about the night mode on this thing, which also works really well. Now, low light with this phone is kind of crazy. So if you take a low light picture and then a nightscape picture, I actually think it looks better without nightscape on. This phone actually takes really nice low light shots with the primary camera lens. You see when you switch over to nightscape, it's got that green hue to it that looks kind of funky. So in low light conditions, I think this phone does great. You probably don't even need its nightscape mode. However, with zero light, as you can see here, turning on nightscape does do the trick. Once again, it does still have kind of a greenish hue, but I mean, this was a pitch black room, so the fact that you can see it this well is still really, really impressive. So I guess in the end of the day, I kind of agree it is good enough, the camera, but for me, good enough means really good, because I demand a really good camera. It does almost everything you need to do. My only issue with it is occasionally I do still detect a little shutter lag with the camera. I feel like it's better than when the phone first came out, but it is still an issue. Other than that, I really like the camera. When the phone first came out, in the review roundup, I said people were giving this camera a B+. Later on, I think that kind of changed and went down to, let's say, a B with later reviews. I'm going to go ahead and give it a B+. I think the camera's really good. I think it's a little bit underrated, and I think for the vast, vast majority of people out there who are going to use it, it's going to do the job just fine. So now I'm going to talk about what might be my biggest issue with this phone. As I said before, I'm not sure it's the camera. For me, the thing that I've probably had the most disappointment with, and it hasn't been terrible, but that I have noticed or has been the biggest inconvenience to me, is the battery life. Now, it's got the super fast 30-watt charging, so that does mitigate that a bit, but when I game on this thing, you can actually hear the battery being sucked out of it. It is bad. If I use it just normally throughout the day, and I'm not gaming on it, I'm not trying to push 90 hertz frame rates through the thing, and I'm not using that 855 overclocked processor, then it does much better. But when I start to game on this phone, it loses battery quick. Now, I have a power case that I put on this thing that is not very attractive, but it does do the job as far as, you know, I pop it on, it gets me through the evening with my gaming, no problem. I'll leave a link to that in the description. But it does add a lot of bulk to the phone, and it's probably not something that you'd want to carry around with you a whole lot. So when this phone first came out, people said the battery was good, not great on it, would definitely get you through the day, no problem. I'm going to say not exactly. When this phone came out, it was promoted by gamers. It was somewhat promoted as a gaming phone, once again with the 90 hertz refresh rate and with the overclocked processor. This phone was marketed as a gaming device. So I feel like if you're going to do that, then you should have a battery that goes with it. The ROG Phone 2 did that. They put a huge battery on their phone because they knew the demands that that overclocked processor and big high refresh rate screen would put on the device. OnePlus did not do that. They went with the thinner, more, I guess, attractive form factor, but the battery does take a hit. So I would say that when the phone came out, most people said the battery was good. I gave the score for that a B, or the grade for that a B when the phone came out. I'm going to go ahead and give it a B-. It's not terrible, and once again, if you're not a gamer, it will do the job, but like I said, this is a high refresh rate phone. I think a lot of gamers bought it probably for that reason, so If game is going to kill the battery, I think that should come out of the grade just a little bit. Last but not least, miscellaneous features. So this phone has a lot of cool little features baked into it. It uses Oxygen 10, which is very similar to stock Android. In fact, I did a comparison video about stock Android to Oxygen 10. If you want to watch that, it's probably over my head right now, and I'll put a link at the end of the video as well. But Oxygen 10 brings a lot of cool stuff to this phone. It brings a screen recorder, which is how I showed you a lot of the footage earlier about performance when I was showing you the gaming on this phone. It's got a game space on the phone where it actually allocates power to the processor and the GPU when playing games. It also changes your notifications and whatnot. I did a video about that as well if you want to check that out. But this phone is actually a really good gaming phone. Battery aside, and I know I just kind of ripped it for its battery a short time ago, this phone is a great gaming device. Oxygen 10 makes it a very smooth device. There's virtually no bloat in the thing. It's got the volume rocker on the side that I mentioned before. There's a lot of cool specific things that this phone has that some other Android phones don't. When the phone first came out, people did acknowledge that. They said that the special features were good, but not great. They said that there were other phones that had some features that this thing didn't, so I went ahead and gave it an A- at the time. But after using this phone and coming from a stock Android device and using this phone, I'm going to go ahead and say miscellaneous features on this phone are an A. So, needless to say, I really like this phone. I'm really impressed with it. One of the nice things about being an Android user is you don't have to stay loyal to any specific device. You can always just get the device that you think meets your needs the best at the time you need the phone. This met the bill for me. I've been exceptionally happy with it up to this point. And I would say that moving forward, when I do look at my next phone, OnePlus will probably have the inside track. Doesn't mean I won't look at the next Pixel phone, and that doesn't mean I won't look at a Samsung phone, but this one will be the front runner just because I've enjoyed it so much to this point, and it's done what I've asked it to do so well up till now. Now, as far as the reviews go with the reviewers and the critics and whatnot, I said that I would compare my grades to their grades that they did when the phone first came out, and I gotta be honest, they did a really good job with talking about and nailing the features, what was good and what was less than good with the features on this phone. There were only two grades that we disagreed with. The battery, which I felt like most reviewers had gave the phone a B for battery. I gave it a B-, and then for miscellaneous features, I felt like the reviewers had given it an A-, and I'm giving it an A. So really very small differences, and that can just be personal preference as much as anything else. So if anything, what this little experiment has kind of done for me is made me appreciate the reviewers and the YouTubers out there even more, and just how good a job they did with this device, and probably a bunch of others, as far as grading it or rating it and telling you about it, the good and the bad, the pros and the cons, with just a very short amount of use. So that does it for my 3-month review of the OnePlus 7T. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Rando Tech Info, signing out.